Good evening. This is the special meeting for the Westland Community Schools Board of Education. Is brought to order on Tuesday, August 22nd, 2017 at 6 p.m. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome each and every one of you. Your attendance this evening reflects your interest in public education. It's truly appreciated. At this time, we'll move on to item number 153.18, the Pledge of Allegiance. Dwayne, you lead us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 154.18, roll call in attendance. Ms. Hines?
Mr. Cox.
Present.
Mr. Buckaloo.
Present.
Dr. Weaver.
Present.
Ms. Hines. Present. Ms. Madison. Present. Ms. Medill.
I'm here.
Ms. Walker.
Present.
Let the record show 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 155.18, citizen comments on agenda items only. Okay, seeing none. So once again, welcome. So today starts the interview process for the next superintendent. There'll be two nights tonight, Tuesday the 22nd and Thursday the 23rd. Each night there will be 3 candidates. We also have feedback sheets that are available for you after each candidate. If you have something that a comment or any type of feedback you want to give us. Some of you may already have them, but they're on the podium right in front there. Dr. Marlene Davis is our facilitator, and she will be answering all the questions to the candidates the candidate will be up here, so we're all together. And Ms. Davis will be sitting there, and she's going to ask the questions for us this evening. So at this time, we're going to move on to item number 156.18, the superintendent search and selection process.
All right, we have our first candidate. This is Dr. Carl Shultz, Board of Education, and he would like to shake hands with you, but it's sort of awkward, so let's see how agile he is here.
It's a lot more agile than I look, I promise. I also
Anyway.
have something I'd like to. Well, could you pass one down for me?
That's all you get. How do you do? Welcome this evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you see up there, do you get questions or?
There's water in that pitcher, and we're just, that's there to see if you can pour it without dribbling it and that kind of stuff. So it's a test for candidates. So, good evening, Dr. Shultz. I think we've had a conversation, so you know that I'll be answering the questions, and you'll be directing your answers to these 7 individuals. So, we'd like to start with the first question, and you know that the questions are taped at your seat there in case you're a visual learner and you want to look at them as I read. The board's had an opportunity to review your resume, your supporting materials, but please tell them something about yourself that's not in your application documents, and include in your answer why you are interested in the superintendency of Wayne Westland Community Schools.
Wonderful. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Education for inviting me for this conversation. I was excited to get the offer, and of course, I'm here, so I'm looking forward to this discussion. I also like to take this opportunity to introduce my beautiful wife, Jessica, who's here with me in support tonight. With these introductory opening statements, I like to talk about my support staff. I don't, just as you don't lead alone, you also can't do what you do alone without your family support. So my wife, Jessica, is an educator, and we have 2 beautiful children. Just to show that we like to take risks, our son is 22 and a recent graduate of Michigan State University, and he is currently serving as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, so we're very proud of him. And the risky part is actually, we have a 2-year-old who's currently learning her colors at home, so we like to just mix it up just a little. But we're here this evening, and I'm especially here because I've known Wayne Westland for some time. I think you've seen in my resume that having taught here for a couple years, I also did my mentoring for my administrative degree here at Stevenson Middle School under Jenny O'Brien when she was principal. And Wayne Westland is a dear place in our heart. Quick story is that when I first was hired in Wayne Westland as a teacher, I showed up one day, as most new teachers do, to get their classrooms ready. And when I came in, I brought my fiance at the time, and she was going to be my helper, and she's the decorator of the group, so she was going to help me, make a nice board. And she walked in the building with me, and the principal of the building asked to be introduced. And I walked away for some time, and about an hour later, I went looking for my fiance, and I came back, and she was just walking out of a meeting with a signed contract to start teaching in 2 weeks. So we had the pleasure of working together in the building side by side for some time. So if that gives you a little example of what this district means to me as a person, even though I left some time ago, I left to continue learning, and I've done that, and now I'm back in front of you because I think I can lead this district in the future. I've read your plans, I know where you're going, and I can enhance it as well as facilitate it.
Thank you. Would you please share some examples with the board of how you plan to maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and community groups if you're selected to be the superintendent?
Absolutely. I think that the superintendent being the liaison to the Board of Education is one of the most visible parts of this district. And I believe in collaboration with the community. I believe that in order to have a successful functioning district where people feel like they're invested and they get the support that they need to be parents, you need to hold opportunities for them to come into the district, take stock in what's going on within the buildings, but also go out to them at their community organizations and the functions that you're invited to. I plan on coming in and joining as many groups as possible, the city council opportunities, the Rotary clubs, any civic groups that will have us as be a part of them, because we really need those partnerships to thrive. And as well as holding the opportunities for the community to come back in, whether you have students here in Wayne Westland or not. This is a very proud and tradition and rich district. We need to make sure that we continue to have the support of individuals, and we need to make sure that we give those opportunities to do so. I like to, I used to say I have an open door policy, but I found as I moved up through the administrative ranks that it's not good enough to be open door. You have to actually be out of your office and out there doing it. So my current role, I've been doing that. I lead a number of our district groups for our parents and opportunities, and I'd like to continue doing that.
You'll be moving into the superintendent position, and you've had an opportunity to observe your current superintendent. But could you share with the board what you think the important issues are in creating a good school board superintendent relationship, and how do you facilitate such a relationship, and how will you communicate with this board?
First and foremost, honestly, I think that if you build an organization structure where you're tiptoeing around the topics, it lends itself to not being as successful as if you have open dialogue and conversations. I happen to work with one of the, I think, best superintendents in the state in terms of board relationships, and we've had an influx of board members coming and going recently from move-ins and move-outs, but I've watched her masterfully craft a relationship with each and every board member, as I will do with you. And both individual meetings, small committee meetings, and group meetings, I want to make sure you're comfortable in designing the type of communication you'd like to see from me. I'd like to know if you're happy with Dr. Harmela's communication style and it's something that you found that to be useful, I will mirror that. I'm not looking to make significant changes in things that are working well. What I would like to do is to foster that and maybe even bring some new twist to it. That is the nice thing about having the opportunity to have worked with different boards of education, because I think all of us learn differently. I think all of us like to be communicated with differently. But at the end of the day, we can come up with a style that works for myself as well as the 7 of you.
Okay, thanks. Could you take some time to describe your experiences with strategic planning, from initiation of plans to completion of outcomes?
Sure. We just finished a 5-year strategic planning cycle and are in the process right now of revamping our plan, because it is a continuation. We've met many of our goals, and we are working now to continue that process. So the way we've started that is by having community forums, much like Wayne Westland has done, in finding out what the needs are of the community, the staffing, the students, the auxiliary personnel, and all those other groups I talked about being with, as a community partner. Finding out what all the stakeholders are looking for in a school district and what will help them thrive. And by doing the surveying and by having the forums, we've been able to compile this information, and then also to then review and to make sure that we're meeting the needs with where they're at with our current plan as going into the future plan, making any tweaks possible. So now we're actually, I said, we're in the process of doing that. We just finished our last community forums, and based on our last plan, one of the things that came out of that was we unfortunately had to close a school building probably about 4 years ago. So we had it closed for 3 years. And it was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do as an administration, as a district. It's disheartening to do so. I know many have shared in that experience. I could also thankfully say that we are the only district I know of in the state of Michigan to reopen that building that we closed 3 years later due to an increased student population. And it wasn't by accident. Our strategic plan got at the heart of why students were leaving Fitzgerald schools, and then at the heart of why they were somewhere else. We called and grouped every single parent who lived in our district who had a student that attended somewhere else. Some wouldn't meet with us, but over 130 did. And we asked them the hardest questions you can ask. What are we doing wrong? What are we not offering to you? Because we think that we do a lot of things really well. So that was part of that process. And in doing so, we've been able to have 3 straight years of growth in our students based on that last plan. Now taking that information, having the growth back, we needed to open a building. So the strategic planning process moving forward was to decide what to do with that building once you open it back up. We were K-5 buildings prior to that. Do we continue the traditional K-5 sense? Do we do something different? Follow the research, follow evidence-based instruction. We decided to do a grade level configuration. So in the fall of this year, we have a grade-specific buildings opening up for all of our elementary. And we're excited about it, but it was through the hard work of strategically planning with our community and telling us what they need, and then doing the research to make sure it would work for us. So as we speak, we're finishing the final drafts and rolling it back out, and we're going to start the process all over again, because that's what we do. And, monitoring and ensuring that we're being held accountable, and then keep doing the next step.
So we talk about collaborative leaders in our work. How would we recognize a collaborative leader? What behaviors would we see to know that this person was a collaborative leader?
It's an interesting question. Collaborative leadership, like most types of leadership, can exhibit different forms. There are times that you'll walk into one of our district meetings that I run, and I'm in front, I'm speaking, and I'm working, and I'm soliciting ideas, I'm pulling information out of the stakeholders. There are times that you walk into meetings I'm holding, even with parents, and you couldn't tell that I'm the deputy superintendent of schools. I'm just another participant that's letting the group lead. So I think the collaborative partnership is really when you have a group of stakeholders and you value each other's opinion enough that it's not an ego thing to decide who needs to bark out the instructions, but more importantly, it's a decision-making process. There is a decision maker at the end, but the voices will be heard at the table, and the participants will know that they really truly had a voice and a piece of that decision.
Carl, could you give an example of, in your current district, of how specifically you've collaborated with various stakeholders important to the school district's success?
Absolutely. When I arrived at Fitzgerald High School, I was brought in, and I didn't apply for the job. It's an interesting conversation that, again, it was a conversation about education. I was invited from a friend of a friend, and they had been recognized as a persistently low-achieving school back when the PLA law first took effect in 2009-10. And I sat down with the superintendent who had these great ideas and said, but I have this building at the high school level. It's not one of the 5 worst performing in the state. They're just lower than they should be based on their demographics. And the state came in and gave them a choice: close the building, charter the building, or remove the principal and bring in a new leader. They chose the latter because they thought it was the least intrusive. They kept the principal because they thought she was a talented leader. So I stepped into a situation where the state of Michigan, MDE, gave us a monitor to oversee us, and the plan was halfway created, and it was a good, solid plan. It was a great basis for school improvement. And we had to apply for the SIG grant, the school improvement grant at the time, and we were awarded just over $1.3 million through the application, which I helped guide. And so we had 3 years to climb out of monitoring, or there would be another more, I'll call it a steep penalty for doing so. And it took every talent that I had to take this group of very impressive educators who were downtrodden. They were beaten down by the state of Michigan, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. They lost their boss, they lost their friend. They were being monitored by a lady from MDE, and here goes this new guy coming from Wayne County that doesn't know anything about Macomb County. And I had to step in and build relationships and build the capacity to actually make the changes that were necessary. And slowly but surely, by the end of the first year, we were taken off the PLA list and actually awarded reward school status. And it was for the level of achievement and improvements we made. Year 2, we made reward status by working together for beating the odds. And so that was the one that we were really looking for. That means that we're doing better than our expectations are from MDE and their formulas. So that's one example, but it was very difficult. We had more meetings and more collaborative conversations than I can imagine. We brought in every possible person in the community from Fitzgerald's right in the heart of manufacturing, much like Wayne Westland. We have the tech center for GM down the street. We have Chrysler around the block. We have Jeep right down the street. We have a lot of engineering firms in Warren. And so we brought those players to the table too, because we knew not only did we want to improve our student, but we also wanted to improve it so they had when they left us, they had an avenue to be successful. So we wanted to do the whole package, not just get out of monitoring. We wanted to actually get out of monitoring with an end goal of having our students walking out with better skills to be more marketable. And that's one of the things that we did. We brought everyone at the table. The bargaining groups, the Teachers Association, the Custodial Association, to the superintendent, to myself, to the board members. They were all hands on deck. We worked together, and we were able to find solutions to problems that previously existed. And I'm very proud of the work we've done there.
Thank you. Budgets can be seen as moral documents. Describe what process you plan to use to make sure that the budget best represents the values of the district and the strategic plan.
Sure. Well, since you've already begun much of the work of asking what's important, I just reread on the way before leaving the house today what's important to the stakeholder groups. And a lot of it is budgetary. And how do we spend the limited funds that we have, and how do we ensure that we budget for the things that matter most to us. The process that I would use is similar to the process that I use now. And again, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. Wayne Westland's been around for a long time, and if it's working for us, then we'll continue doing so, and maybe look at a few different things, because one thing I like to do is have a continuous model of reviewing where we're at and not having a quarterly or a year, just looking at it before the state adoption. I want to make sure that we are continuously looking at where we're at, and if we are still continuing to look at the process for reducing programs not the important programs, but programs that can be consolidated that are being truly effective so that we can budget more effectively, then we need to do that together, and we need to continuously model that behavior by looking at it, reviewing, creating a dashboard. One of the things we've done with our community is that we've created a dashboard to give our community on kind of the state of the schools. We started it last year. We've done it now 3 times, and that dashboard includes student achievement, budget, as well as behavioral information, and also it has a piece to it where we ask them for their input, where they can link onto it. And now that the state is proposing to go to a dashboard for accountability, it was kind of the lead-in for us. We want our parents and our community to know what's coming down the pipe in terms of what to expect, whether it's a color-coded system, a grade level system. I truly hope that the dashboard system takes effect because it's been effective for us, because I know that I have more parents now that are in the know about how Fitzgerald Public Schools are doing than we ever had previously, because it's a quick, dirty way to look at this is where we are, this is where we want to be with some indicators, and we actually let them tell us what it is and what they want to know about it. That's how we kind of came up on the achievement, the behavioral, because initially we didn't have behavioral as a part of it. They wanted to know, how many suspensions do we have at Fitzgerald? How many times has the resource officer been called, or why do we have a resource officer? Is it needed? And so we took that information from our stakeholder groups, and we wanted to add behavioral compartments to it.
Thanks. What do you think is the most important leadership skill? There are a lot of skills, but which one do you think is the most important?
Listening.
And say about that.
There's a quote that I actually included in my entry plan for you. I think you'll find it when you have a chance to go through it. The most successful people that I know are the ones who listen more than they talk. I truly find that to be honest. And the less you say sometimes, the more effective you can be. And I like to take in the information, digest it. I like to hear it from multiple sources, because somebody has a disagreement or it has a diverse opinion. It doesn't make them wrong. It's just different. So, part of what we do, and as what you do as a leader is, you take all the information and you synthesize it, and you're able to come up with a solution that meets for the whole. And our goal is to do what we can to meet the largest number of center mass as possible. Not everybody will be happy with our decisions, but we can honestly say that if we can say that we listened to all the conversation prior to having to do something, then I think people feel valued then. And the other part of being a leader is ensuring value and being respected. And I think you earn the respect from individuals when they know that what they say is actually heard.
Okay, thanks. How have you improved student achievement in your district in Fitzgerald or in a previous district?
I'm very fortunate, and I wish it were luck, but it's not. I'm not a lucky person. I work hard, and my team works hard. So we've been lucky to improve instruction and achievement across the board in a few districts I've been in. And in Fitzgerald in particular, because I've been there for the last 8 years, we started with the high school. I mentioned our story at the high school. It's been told by MD quite a bit now. We became a model school for improvement. My PhD is in school reform and organizational leadership. So I actually studied it. I studied our achievement gap reduction and our improvement of scores in my dissertation through Oakland University. And I've actually presented at a few different places. But you do it by starting with a review of where you're at, what you're doing, ensuring that you're teaching what needs to be taught, you're assessing what needs to be assessed, and you're not overdoing any of that. And looking at the programs that you have in place and focusing on a smaller number of programs with 100% effort as opposed to halfway focusing on 100 programs. You need to go much deeper and not spread yourself thin because of burnout. And as talented as the educators are in Wayne Westland and in Fitzgerald and across the state of Michigan, burnout's a real thing. It is for you as individuals. I know you come here in the evening and you're exhausted, but you still have a job to do because you're taking an oath. I do the same when I go home, and And I know that teachers, when they go home, if they feel like they're running and trying to focus on 50 different things each day that schools have thrown at them, then we're not doing our job as administrators and leaders. We need to ensure that we support them and, you know, and offer the opportunity to get really good at what they're doing so that they feel like they can grow their children. And so at the elementary schools, once I left the high school position and became the deputy superintendent, we took a look at our elementary programs and our reading and literacy programs, literacy being such a key component to all other subjects. We took a look at the programs we were using. We monitored for a year. We took data samples. We brought in some experts. We partnered with the University of Michigan at the time I was teaching as an adjunct at U of M, and we brought in some of the department reading specialists, and we had them do an evaluation also. And we realized that what we were teaching just wasn't getting at the core of the literacy skills that our students were coming in with. We needed to do a better job at that. Instead of trying to have multiple interventions for students, actually just strengthen the core. And within a couple of years, we've been able to reduce our intervention pieces by probably 25 to 30% in just 3 years. So that's significant for us. That means our students have a better building block to succeed. And that's where we're at now. So now we are continuously looking to not only work on the core, but also to accelerate our students, because just like when I talked about with the job partnering and the industry partners, you can't just focus on one area. So intervention's wonderful. We need to get people caught up and our students caught up, but what about the students who are already above grade level and are sitting there? You need to have options for them. And so the biggest piece I think that we've done so far is we've added a one-to-one technology initiative in the last 2 years. It took us about 2 years to finish. Fitzgerald Public Schools is one-to-one. We are a Google for Education district, meaning that we very rarely use Microsoft products any longer. It did two things. It cut down on cost, and it allowed for advanced sharing of materials. So we've done that, and with that piece, we've added some components for personalized learning, so our students can have a personal portfolio of learning materials based on their initial screener assessment. We screen 3 times a year. It's a 20-minute screener taken on their Chromebooks that they have in front of them all day. It's very quick. It's very user-friendly, and we use that to constantly monitor where they're at. So that way, the students that need that extra intervention are getting it, but the students that are at the top level and are 2, 3, 4 reading levels higher than where they should be, they're able to also succeed and continue growing. Because eventually, if you're above grade level but you're not being catered to, you're going to start to slow down. The gap may get a little better for you, but only because the top is dropping down.
Carl, could you address in this answer the challenges that you see facing Wayne Westland Community Schools in terms of achievement? Just briefly touch on what you know and what you've researched.
Sure. Well, I think that Wayne Westland's problems are not isolated in just Wayne Westland. We are losing students in Wayne Westland, and as students are no longer arriving, we're having to cut budgetary items. And just as the things I mentioned in Fitzgerald, the same students aren't necessarily always coming, so they're coming with a different set of skills. So I think that you are on an important need to start to do the same types of things, offer programs and differentiation for the multiple levels of students that are in your classrooms. And when you're doing that, you have to be very budget conscious and very thoughtful and intentional with your programming needs. And I've looked at the data and to see some of the patterns and the trends that are taking place, and literacy's a big part. Math and literacy right now is dipping. So I think by putting some strong programs in for personalized learning and to strengthen the core, I think you'll see some of the same successes we've had.
Okay, thanks. What role do you think the superintendent plays with the unions in a district?
They're partners. I think if there's not a partnership in place between the organizations that represent our staff and the district, it's going to be a combative mess, and nothing really gets accomplished. There are times that we have to, as administration, come to the bargaining groups and ask them for help. Maybe it's outside of the contract, maybe it's outside of what's been normally accomplished or what's been normally acceptable. But if you don't have that capacity built up with respect and having that relationship, then the answer is going to be no. We haven't been giving them money. We have not been doing the things that we would like to do for them in most cases, especially recently. So you have to have a partnership, and the district will only thrive when all groups come together with the same goal. The best plane in the world can be incredible. It can win a Pulitzer Prize. If it can't be sold and bought by the people that are at the heart of it, it's not going to be successful. You have to be able to have everyone pulling in the same direction. I think if you would ask the president of the organizations, the multiple organizations in my district, they'll tell you exactly what I mean by acting as a partner. Having lunch, having conversations, not just about issues. Figuring out ways to highlight staff that have gone above and beyond, that they both tell me about and that I've seen, and I come to them and say, how can we partner to highlight this individual, because they've done above and beyond. And as a principal at Fitzgerald for 5 years, I never once had a grievance written against me. I'm very proud of that. And it was never because I didn't make hard decisions. We made a lot of hard decisions, more than I care to admit and remember. But it was because when we did that, we had conversations along the way, and there was never a surprise. Not with the student, not with the teacher that wasn't holding up their end of the bargain, not with a piece that maybe was just outside the contract language just a little bit. There's always a conversation leading up to what needed to take place. And I've continued that as a central administrator as well.
What's your familiarity with the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning and the 4 dimensions of instructional leadership?
We don't use them. Although when we were searching our tools for our both administration and for our teacher evaluations, we did have a sit down. We have done a lot of Marzano training in our district, and I was actually in favor of 5D. I thought it was the best solution. I liked the shorter, more brief observations, the number of them as opposed to the 1 or 2 times a year where you sit down and may not see everything you're looking for. I liked the design of it, but I was this is one time where I was outvoted, and I could not convince our group to go with it, because our teachers were very familiar with Charlotte Danielson and wanted to continue with the Danielson updated model. But so I've not gone through the full training, but I have gone through the introductory training and the overview of them. I'd very much like to be part of those programs.
So the second part of that question is, give an example of a strategy you've used to help educators learn and grow, and I would suspect then your answer is Charlotte Danielson and Marzano is what you've used in Fitzgerald.
Actually, I would use a lot more than just the evaluation tool. I think that is a tool, but it's not the main tool in the toolbox. I've always considered myself, in any position I have, the first learner and the first teacher, and I take it to task in working with individuals, whether they're aspiring administrators or whether I'm teaching a class somewhere, or just walking around and I see a young teacher or a veteran teacher who's struggling with the concept. And I think that by having mentors, and I'm a huge fan of instructional rounds. I think that if our MDs have been trained with using instructional rounds for the last who knows how long, it's good enough for our doctors and physicians. I think it should be good enough for educators as well. And I know that there are 3-minute walkthroughs and a number of different ways to go about that, but I think that the biggest thing at it, no matter what you call it, is getting good, solid teachers to mentor and to work with others. And so the tools that I would use are just a multitude of toolbox, put together. It's mentoring, it's following, it's providing opportunity to grow, really. Finding individuals who are looking to get better, even if we haven't isolated them, but they know that they want to get better. Finding those opportunities to get them in front of another person or with another person, and bringing coaches in as well. I've always loved the model at Wayne Westland where you had content specialists, you had a number of different layers and opportunities for teachers to grow as teacher leaders. I think that's truly important. think that it provides opportunities for aspiring leaders, whether they want to be Galileo or classroom leaders, or they want to be a building administrator. I think it's opportunities like that help grow ourselves. And I take pride in continuously learning myself, and that's how I do it. I ask those that I'm surrounded by the things that they do well, and I learn from them.
Thanks. Describe how you provide the freedom to allow others to do their jobs, yet hold them accountable for the outcomes of their work.
Sure. Well, I like to say that I surround myself with people that are talented and let them do their job. I monitor them by asking the questions, just like we talked about with budgeting, and by monitoring the budget situation. I monitor their ability to function, and what I'm really looking for in a monitoring is, am I supporting you well enough? Am I doing my job to support you so that you can do yours? Provide the resources that are necessary, provide the time that is necessary, because we already do too much in our day, and making sure that you along each step of the way are able to get what you need. And that's really what leadership's all about. It's not about just decision making, it's about supporting those that you serve. And I always look at myself as being able to serve those that I've put in a position to accomplish something.
You've sort of answered this question already in a previous answer, but what's your experience with parents who chose another school district instead of their own? And why did they make these choices, and what can be done? And you kind of talked about what you've done in Fitzgerald, but might you share what
I can elaborate quite a bit
what
on
some of the reasons were that they chose other districts?
Sure. Perception is number one. The sole reason that many families told us, and these are families that moved to the district. So we broke our groups into two different groups. Parents whose students attend a different location that once attended Fitzgerald, and parents of students who attend a different location who've never attended Fitzgerald, meaning they moved in and immediately went to a parochial or a charter or a neighboring district, or they just, moved in and went about, just heard that the school has gone downhill. Fitzgerald, like Wayne Westland's a very proud, we've been around for over 100 years. Families after families, a generation after generation. Homecoming is a great event for us. So we broke them into those two groups because I thought it was important to isolate the difference. And I thought there would be differences in opinions. At the end of the day, though, the research showed that it was the same main reason. It was perception of the district. And some of it had to do with achievement. Some of it had to do with changing demographics. Some of it had to do with it's just the off-the-wall things that you just cannot, they built a new school down the road and it's prettier. But the perception was that it's been there. And the other thing was people knew they could come back if they didn't like where they were going. So it was that I'm going to go somewhere else because it's different mentality. So once we got our focus groups in there, and I facilitated, we partnered with a marketing firm to help us because we weren't experts in this. We wanted to make sure we did it right. But after we got pretty good at watching, I started to do a little of this, and I may have said a few defensive things along the way in those forums, but it's tough when individuals and families don't know the truth. They don't know what they're missing out on. The families who are living in Wayne Westland but not attending don't know what they can get when they get here. There's very few places in Michigan, anywhere in this country, that offer the same and the number of programs that you offer. And that's what we sold ourselves on. You're going to a small charter school down the street because it's in a new building. You're forgetting what we can do for you and what we have done for this community for 100 years. So we found that information out, and then we aggressively, this is where we came in with the strategic planning and getting families back. We met with over 130 families. We were able to get back over 30 of those families within 18 months. That's a tough sell. Because now we're asking people to leave the places they've gone and built relationships. But we were able to sell them on the Fitzgerald brand by highlighting the things that we have. We have a policy that every building administrator and in our district, and they facilitate that to their staff, that every week they send the central administration one good article, one good story. The number of stories we've had published in the local papers, including the Macomb Daily, the Warren Weekly, Detroit News, Free Press, has gone up probably 1,000% in the last 5 years. Mostly because we continuously inundate them with information. And we get lucky and it's a slower day, or we might get the cameraman out, but we've gotten really good at taking photos. We don't have a sole marketing person. We're not that large. But we've gotten really good at selling ourselves. And we're not hyping it. We're selling what's really there. And I still think we undersell what we do. And so that whole process is all about just exploring and getting families to come back into the school to see what we can offer them. Our auto tech programs, our CTE programs, we're in a consortium with 5 other districts where we can offer just about any program you'd like. All those programs aren't available if they're going somewhere else, and they need to see the facilities, the world-class facilities we have. Our one-to-one initiative, we've sold that. I brought Chromebooks to those forums to show them this is what your child will get every single day when they sit in their class, showing them examples of that. And then the dashboard. Do you get this kind of update from where you're coming from? Where are you at? Now, some families, if they're going to a parochial school, and some families had never been in Fitzgerald. They've always gone to De La Salle or somewhere else. But most just had a perception that wasn't true. It's our job to change that perception.
I just need to say that we have 20 minutes left and we still have 5 questions, so we're doing fine, but
Okay.
I don't want to run out of time before we run out of questions. Carl, considering your past accomplishments, what do you think some of the reasons are for your success?
Partnerships, collaboration, hard work. I think that if you take those 3 cornerstones and then all the intangibles that go with them, the ability don't be afraid to fail. I think that's a big one. I think that courageous leadership and courageous decision making is an important piece. It's if you don't try anything, you're never going to accomplish anything. I've failed. I'm telling you about all the great stuff. There's some ideas we've had that just didn't pan out. But the good news is we learn from them. And so when I bring something to my staff, they know to a person it's an idea with intent, it's intentional, it has merit because I've already researched it. I don't walk in anything unprepared. When I start something, my team brings everything we have to the table and we hash it out from there, and then we share those ideas, and then we're able to sell those ideas. I think it's truly important to be able to work with your stakeholders and your groups and have an idea, create the idea, foster the resources you need to get it accomplished, but the most important piece is actually believing that it'll work and finishing it. And we're really good at that.
Take a moment to reflect and share with the board your most difficult administrative situation that you've dealt with, how you handled it, and how you arrived at your decision.
Closing an elementary and selecting which one it would be. We have all neighborhood schools in the middle of a neighborhood, and we have, like most places, various aged buildings, and so I knew, and our staff knew, and even our teachers knew, even though everyone wanted to fight for their building because they were invested in that, which I want my staff to be. Just because it's not the newest building or not the oldest building, it might not be the best building to close necessarily. You have to look at where the population resides in the community and how many walkers that will create, how many busers that will create, what's the difference in time students will be on the buses. There are a lot of variables that go into decisions like this. And I think that through about a year process, because we knew we were heading down this road, we had about 4 or 5 years of small incremental declines in enrollment. And, when you're a district that's 4,000 students versus 12,000, it's a little when we lose 20 students, it hurts bad. And so we had some small incremental changes, and then one year we had a 50 student dip, and that meant we could almost not pay our bills anymore. We've never been in receivership. We've never been below the state threshold for what they consider the 5% for fund balance, but we've been close. And we don't want to be there. We don't want anyone, we've been through that, and where they tell us what we have to do. We don't want anyone telling us how to handle our buildings. This is our community schools. So we had to make that tough decision, and the final decision wasn't probably the happiest. We have a building that's much older than the one we closed down. We had a building that was the building we kept open versus we came down to 2 at the end of the day for elementaries, and one had ample parking, ample space, and was newer. The other one had no parking, limited in availability to create parking, and would be hindered by additional busing traffic. But with the information we had, we closed the one that didn't seem to make the most sense. And anger, tears, upset, recall calls for the Board of Education, and it was tough. We had to mend fences, we had to build relationships, and we had to explain why we did it. We tried throughout the whole time, but not everyone wanted to hear it at the time. But we had a more concerted effort afterward, and so that is the most difficult thing I've had to do. I've never seen so many individuals upset with tears in their eyes, because again, this is a building that was built in the 1930s, so it was tough.
If you were selected to lead the Wayne Westland School District, you will be inheriting a strategic plan that has been both adopted and endorsed by the school board, staff, and community. Based on your research of the district and its strategic plan, what challenges would you face as a new superintendent, and what strengths would you bring to address those challenges?
Well, the challenges are, it's a very comprehensive strategic plan, very well thought out and designed. If I didn't believe that it was, 1, a well thought out and designed plan, 2, a plan that I think is doable, and 3, a plan that I think is going to be effective, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you, because I knew you've already gone down that road and you've started the work, a lot of hard work. When I read it, it really was the tipping point for my application. Dr. Davis will tell you, I did contact her, and I said, well, is this a plan that they started and are looking to do something different? And she said, no, they're invested in this plan. I could tell you that having read it, having accomplished many of the things that you're looking to accomplish in there, having learned from, again, some of the mistakes we've made along the way, but also a lot of the successes, I think this is a plan that's going to be very effective if implemented fully. And so what I'll bring to the table is that I'm going to bring in my skills from having already been able to get the buy-in for something similar to this, where you hit all facets of the educational realm. You're looking at schools' programming and instruction, budgets, mission, vision, and beliefs. I think my favorite was the general operations. You actually found a place to bring in the pieces that maybe most people don't think about when they think about the successful operation of a school. I love the piece with employee retention and attraction. We all know there's a severe teacher shortage, and it's coming. We've had to hire over 19 staff members this year. We're in a place where we used to have 150 applicants for every job. We're pulling teeth. I'm calling my contacts at all the major universities, and I've been able to teach classes at some of them, and I'm saying, send me your best, your brightest. Send me some individuals that we can train up. And so that retention piece is huge, as well as that attraction piece. The partnering with, being able to partner with the university, and Wayne Westland's in a nice location to be able to do that with some major universities nearby. Macomb does not have a major university, a 4-year school. And so you are in the backyard of a number of them, but partnering so that they are pipelines to Wayne Westland schools. So I think these different initiatives are important. I think that your action steps are valid, and I think that you just need someone to facilitate it. And and not just do it from an office. You need somebody on the ground who's willing to get their hands dirty and do the work. And I believe I'm that person.
Okay. How do you create a climate in the district that values diversity and inclusion? Give some specific examples of how you've done this in your past positions.
Sure. Fitzgerald, if you're not familiar with their demographics, is truly a melting pot. We have about 18% ELL students. We We speak over 40 languages in our district. We work very hard to include all families in the work that we do. We have cultural nights. We have held over the last 6 years 4 or 5 parent universities where the focus have been culture and accessibility. And so we've been very active in making sure that our cultures that have joined us are feeling included. But it's not, you don't do it by accident. You have to be actively engaged in those types of things. You have to learn a lot yourself. I've learned quite a bit about cultures I wasn't as familiar with. And then I shared that information with other individuals, whether it was the appropriate response when you're on stage at a graduation for cultural handshakes or not handshaking. I think those are important things that none of us think about when you're starting to go into education. Really, they're things that you learn about as you get to have the great experiences with your kids. So it goes back to what I said about highlighting the things we have and to making sure that they're welcome and that they feel like they're part of it. The decision-making piece can be tough for individuals who may not speak a language or may not have individuals that they feel they can connect with. So you have to connect with them.
Could you share any experience that you've had in gathering community support for issues facing the school district?
Yeah. We recently ran in Macomb County the county ran a bond for a special education millage, something similar to the enhancement millage that you've just passed, which is a wonderful tool. And trying to sell a millage is tough, especially when we were doing it 3 years ago and we started the process. And so we went out in the community and we were actively giving information and sharing and talking about what it would mean to us if we could do this. We knew it would be a tough sell because Macomb County millages don't fare very well usually. It's been a tough few years for our districts, and especially for the county millage. But we went in and we wanted to be very thorough and very honest about what it would mean to us and who would receive the money and how it would help our district, and then admit that maybe if you vote for it, it might not help our district as much as one down the street, but we're all in this together. We as a county are working on this. So we were able to do that, and Fitzgerald actually carried our votes in the millage, and we passed by a nice amount. Unfortunately, the millage failed miserably on the north end of Macomb County because it's a different world on the north end of Macomb County. But what we were able to do is, and we still have individuals asking, are you going to go for it again just as a local millage? And we have to explain the variances and what you can and can't do. But I think that when you have an issue like bonds or millages, and the more you get out and the earlier you start and the more honest and transparent you are, I think the better success you'll have. And sometimes just showing them what's going to happen. We are going for a bond in November, and we are hoping to do a whole lot, and it's going to be about a $50 million bond, and we're hoping to get redesigned building safety, security, update our transportation fleet completely. We're looking to redo some of our buildings' exteriors, as well as create flexible learning spaces for all of our technology and for our students. We want students not to feel like they're in rows of 6 by 5 with their hands on their lap. We want them up. We want them in soft seating. We want to do things that that they're going to make them more comfortable to learn. And so, when you talk about flexible learning space, the average neighbor will look at you and say, "What are you talking about? You have desks." It's a different way of learning. If you've ever seen examples of what Google does or what some of these new business and engineering firms are doing with their staffing, it's an amazing way to learn when you're comfortable. And so we want to invite that and foster that. But you have to do the work. You have to educate. I said I learned a lot about it. Now I'm teaching it. And so that's kind of the process you use.
So, the hour's almost up. See, time flies when you're having fun. We've asked you a number of questions this evening. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the board that they haven't asked you about?
The only thing I'd like to share with the board at this point, after hearing me talk for an hour straight, is that I talk about being a great listener and valuing that. I think relationships it starts with the Board of Education. You started this off by asking how I would work with the board to build those relationships and how I see that relationship fostering. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, part of my role as you are the governance of this district and the stakeholders that have been elected, and my role is to serve you, to inform you, and to provide you the information you need to do your job. And I think that as long as I keep that in mind as I'm able to do it, I know you'll be supported, because just as I talked about supporting our stakeholders in the classroom, I need to support you, because my role and my function is to do the research and to bring you information like that. You may not want research articles, but you might want information to be a synopsis or a condensed version of a Reader's Digest, if you will. And I'm not only willing to do that, I expect to do that. I think that's an important piece to the relationship if you're going to trust me to guide this district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shultz.
Thank you, and please, when you have the time, I know you're not going to do it this evening, you'll be exhausted, but what I put together for you is an example of the entry plan that I would use and a monitoring tool at the end to demonstrate how we would make sure that we accomplish that.
Thank you, we appreciate that. Rolling. Minutes do we have?
13 minutes.
13 minutes. So just to keep you abreast of what's going on, we have about